Breaking tonight, a congressional investigation has just been launched into allegations that the U.S. Census Bureau may have been falsifying the unemployment numbers, including in the months just before the last presidential election. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee sending a letter late today to the director of the Census Bureau, citing a New York Post story claiming that employment data was fabricated and demanding a swift response. The report claims the deception took place first in 2010 and then escalated in the run-up to the 2012 presidential election, including the unemployment rate that was put out just before the election, when it dropped from 8.1% to 7.8%. At the time, it was news that critics like Jack Welch immediately questioned, and which President Obama repeatedly then touted on the campaign trail in the final stretch before Election Day. Watch.
This morning, we found out that the unemployment rate has fallen to its lowest level since I took office.
After losing about 800,000 jobs a month when I took office, our businesses have now added 5.2 million new jobs over the past 2.5 years.
On Friday, we found out the unemployment rate has fallen from the height of 10% down to 7.8%, the lowest since I took office.
We've created 5 million jobs, gone from 800,000 jobs a month being lost, and we are making progress.
The Census Bureau has now released a statement saying it is taking these allegations seriously. Joining me tonight, Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who's a Republican and a member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which has just issued a letter demanding answers and promising a full investigation into this. Congressman, good to see you. And so the essence now of this investigation will be what?
Well, we want to know what the Census Bureau knew, because there are allegations based on this article that we see, and it's just an initial article, that there were people within the Philadelphia field office who not only knew about this and were fabricating data, and the subordinates were doing this, but also superiors were condoning this. And if that is true, I'm telling you, Megyn, that is just not acceptable in this country. It's just not the way we do business.
Is this about stealing an election? I mean, what is this about? Because obviously, if you manipulate the employment data, the question has to be asked whether that is done for political reasons, and who did it and which way did they skew the data.
There are implications for Wall Street and how governments are reimbursed at the state level. But remember, this data came just a mere 30 days or so before a presidential election. And Republicans, every day we were pounding on the fact that Obama doesn't work, that the unemployment rate couldn't get below 8%. And then suddenly, 30 days before the election, it did. And so that begs the question, did that really happen? And we want to know if that's true, because you now have supposed whistleblowers who are saying, we were told to lie about this and it wasn't true. And that's what we want to investigate.
All right, because the New York Post started this by breaking a story citing a census employee who they say was caught faking the results. His name is Julius Buckman, according to confidential census documents obtained by the Post. He claims that he was told to make up information by higher-ups at Census, and that was in 2010. But then the reporting claims that it escalated right before the presidential election, so that it wasn't just a 2010 problem. I want to ask you this, Congressman, because so far, earlier today, it was just the Post out there with its article, citing anonymous sources other than this guy, Julius Buckman, who they claim to have spoken with. But now we have the Census Bureau directly weighing in, and here is what they say. I'll read it to the viewers in part. We have no reason to believe that there was a systematic manipulation of the data described in media reports. We carefully cross-check and verify the work of our staff, including looking for red flags that indicate possible fabrication. That is why when we learned of the allegations of fabricated survey results, we immediately reported them to the Inspector General. So they are admitting that they have conducted or started an Inspector General report. Do we know whether that was ever reported up to labor, as the New York Post claims it was not, or whether anybody in the government was informed that even they believed there was reason to question the data?
We see no immediate evidence that the Census Bureau gave this information to the Department of Labor. Now, we need time for them to respond, but initially, no. The idea that the Inspector General is now involved would lead you to believe that there's probably something maybe a little bit more nefarious than just a writer at the New York Post gone awry. And so we got to be very careful. We'll be very methodical in taking this approach, very tempered in our approach, but it's a very serious allegation because it's not just a one-off person. You're talking about something that escalated over potentially over the course of years and culminated right before an election. And for the true independent who is truly trying to make up their mind about Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, I got to think that this had an effect.
We will continue to follow this as your investigation goes forward. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Megan.
Also tonight, President Obama again addressing the troubled launch of his signature legislation and placing blame squarely on the shoulders of the Republicans. Listen.
There was just ideological resistance to the idea of dealing with the uninsured and people with pre-existing conditions. Yeah, there was a price to that, and it was that what was already going to be hard was operating within a very difficult political environment, and we should have anticipated that that would create a rockier rollout than if Democrats and Republicans were both invested in success. One of the problems we've had is one side of Capitol Hill is invested in failure.
Joining me now, Chris Direwalt, our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com Live. So one side is invested in failure, and there was just ideological resistance to the idea of dealing with the uninsured. I mean, basically those nasty Republicans who are suspicious of hungry children and the elderly, as he once claimed, who like dirty air and water, as he once suggested. Now,
he did say that.
Now he says we're resistant to the idea of dealing with the uninsured and anybody with a pre-existing condition, and that is why his law is having such trouble.
Well, Counselor, if you had a witness and you were deposing somebody and you said, well, what did you do wrong? And that person said, well, what I did wrong was underestimate how terrible the other person was. I wish that I had thought it through how awful this other person is, because if I had, I would have taken more preparations for how awful they were. I think you might find that to be an inadequate or insufficient response.
Right. There would be a non-responsive objection lodged. But this is now becoming somewhat of a pattern, because we saw the president last week come out and say, that's on me. I take responsibility.
Right.
Do a mea culpa of sorts in his press conference. But now, less than a week later, it's the other side wanted it to fail. And really, I underestimated how badly they wanted it to fail. And that comes on the heels of Dr. Emanuel, one of the architects of Obamacare, coming on with me last week and saying this.
You and your colleagues were constantly criticizing, trying to underfund it, and trying to make sure it didn't work.
A lot of that criticism proved true, unfortunately.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're going to try to do everything we can to make it fail, and then when it fails, we're going to say, oh, why did it fail?
I don't think Fox News had anything to do with the rollout of healthcare.gov. As far as I know, we didn't touch that website. Is this the new offense?
Well, they've tried this. This is about the fifth bite at the apple on this. But there is a fundamental disagreement here about what's wrong. So what the president and what liberals and the folks he was talking to yesterday, his campaign volunteers that he was trying to rally yesterday, I guess he was trying to get them to rally him, he said, what they're concerned about is that not enough free health insurance is being given away. Their complaint about the program is that not enough free stuff is going out the door because they did the internet wrong and because all of this stuff. Now, in that area, they blame Republicans because not enough enthusiasm among Republican governors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not why the president's approval rating is tanking. That's not why the Washington Post ABC News poll said that people wish they had Mitt Romney for a president instead of him. The cause of all of that is the insurance policies that are being immolated by the president's intentional policy and the fact that he deceived voters on that subject. So it's not about how much free stuff is being given away. It's about the policies that are being destroyed to finance the free stuff.
And the Republicans had nothing to do with that. I mean, literally, they voted against Obamacare.
The NZ, yes.
They tried to raise the red flag to say that that the regulations by Sebelius were eliminating the grandfathering clause, and no one listened. The Democrats voted. I mean, they literally had nothing to do with the cancellation of these 5 million policies.
And now what liberal Democrats are coming out to say to the president is, man up, dude. You got to get out there and just say this was the plan. But it's hard to blame Republicans for that one, so he's going to keep crawfishing.
Good to see you, Chris.
You bet.
Also.